Hey guys, what's up? So today we're going to do something a little different from what we usually do, because instead of talking about specific things you can do to improve your saxophone playing, today we're going to do something a little more theoretical, because today we're going to talk about transposition. Why don't we roll the intro while I set up the studio? Alright, what's up? So before we get started, my name is Joris Rompen, I'm a professional saxophonist and currently studying at the Brussels Conservatory. My mission on this channel is to have fun, while of course sharing with you guys everything I know around the saxophone. In this video I'm going to explain to you the concept of transposing, the transposing instruments and why they're transposing, simple and double transposition, as well as the two ways to transpose on the fly. Feel free to use the timestamps in the description down below if you're looking for one of these subjects specifically. If the concept of transposition is still something that confuses you on the other hand, I suggest you watch the entire video through. Okay, without further ado, let's start transposing. First of all, what is transposing? Well, transposition is the process of altering the pitch of a note up or down according to a certain predetermined interval. As you can see here, I'm playing a C on the piano. Let's now transpose that C up by a perfect fifth. That way it becomes a G. Sounds easy, right? Let's keep going. Following that same idea, you can also transpose a group of notes or melody, and by doing that change the key in which the melody was initially written. Let's say for example we have this melody in C major and transpose it 1 second higher. The melody will now be written in D major. As you can hear, the melody stays the same, but the color changed. Let's look at the step-by-step process, and as you can see, the only thing I did was transposing every single note inside the melody up by a major second. So the C becomes the D, the G becomes an A, the E becomes an F sharp, etc. Be careful with the E or Mi, because as you can see, when transposing it 1 major second higher, it doesn't simply become F, but F sharp. So when transposing, you always need to pay close attention to which interval you're transposing and how many semitones and whole tones it consists of. This is the most recurrent mistake people make when transposing. Now that we've defined the process of transposition, let's move on to the situation in which we use these techniques. The first situation that comes to my mind is for composers. They use this technique to create sequences all the time in which you'll hear, for example, first the theme in C major and then a few bars later again, but in G major, just like we did in the previous example. Sounds obvious, right? The second situation is probably the reason why you've clicked on this video, the transposing instruments. Just in case, for those of you who don't know what that means, or for those who want a quick reminder, if you play a C or a Do on different instruments, chances are that you won't get to hear the same pitch out of all the instruments if there are any transposing instruments in the bunch. An instrument is considered transposing if the pitch that is heard when playing a note and the written note aren't identical. This is the case, for example, for the alto saxophone, which is tuned in E flat. This means that whenever you play a C on the alto sax, you hear the same pitch as when playing an E flat on a non-transposing instrument. Non-transposing instruments, on the other hand, like the flute, the violin or the piano, just to name a few of them, have as common characteristic that the written note is identical to the heard pitch. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Why would anyone invent transposing instruments? This is so unnecessarily complicated. Can we not just make all instruments non-transposing? Well, yes and no. Think of the saxophone family, for example. With the transposing system, it's very easy to switch from one saxophone to another, because every fingering is identical. Meaning that no matter which saxophone you play, if there's a C written in the score, you'll always take the same fingering for it, and the note will just sound higher or lower depending on the saxophone you're playing on. If you'd make the saxophones non-transposing instruments, on the other hand, that would become a total mess. Because if there's a C written in the score in an alto sax, you would have to play with the fingering of an A to hear a C, whilst on a tenor saxophone, you would have to play a D to hear that same C. Essentially, you would no longer have the same fingerings for each note on alto and tenor saxophone, which would make it unnecessarily complicated. And if you're thinking, why don't we just tune the saxophones immediately in C instead of tuning it in E flat and B flat? Be aware that that would change the way the saxophone works, because the acoustics would be vastly different. See, there's unfortunately no way around transposing. Alright, now that we've all accepted our fate, let's talk about the process of transposition. Let's start with what I like to call simple transposition, meaning that you start from a transposing instrument and go to a non-transposing instrument, or the other way around. The first thing you want to do is identifying the pitch the transposing instrument is tuned to. So if we take for example the soprano saxophone, which you can see right here by the way, you need to know that it is tuned in B flat and that it sounds a major second lower than written. So if I play a middle C on the soprano sax, I hear a middle B flat on the piano. By the way, within the saxophone family, only the sopranino saxophone sounds higher than written. And because it is tuned in E flat, it means that whenever you play a middle C on the sopranino saxophone, you hear an E flat on the piano 1 minor third higher. All the other saxophones sound lower than written. Now, if we go back to our example with the soprano sax, you already know that the transposition will be a major second. The last remaining question is whether it should be a major second up or down, and that depends on the situation. If, for example, you have a score in ut, ut by the way is another name for C and is commonly used as a name for a non-transposed score. For example, a piano score is said to be written in ut. So if you have a score in ut, like a flute score for example, and you really want to play that score on the soprano saxophone, you need to transpose the entire score 1 major second up, because the soprano saxophone sounds 1 major second too low otherwise. You probably already guessed it, but I'm going to say it anyway. So the other way around, meaning you have a score in B flat and you really want to play it on a non-transposing instrument, you need to transpose everything a major second lower. Once you're done with this second step, which was to determine the exact interval you need to transpose and whether it's up or down, you're good to go and start transposing. For those of you who want to learn the way I transpose very quickly once I'm done with these steps, you're welcome to stick around. But before that, we're going to do the same we just did with some double transposition, meaning a transposition between two transposing instruments. These are generally a little bit trickier and will serve as a great example to allow you guys to solidify what we just learned previously. Let's take as an example an alto and a tenor saxophone. You should already know that the alto is tuned in E flat and the tenor in B flat. But not the same B flat as the soprano, it's actually 1 octave lower. This means that there is a perfect fourth or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 semitones between the alto and the tenor saxophone. So imagine you want to play the alto sax's score on the tenor, you need to play everything a perfect fourth higher. Once more, for those who didn't listen, a perfect fourth consists of 5 semitones. The other way around, if you have a tenor sax score and you want to play it on the alto, you need to transpose everything a perfect fourth down. Now, be careful, because the transposition between alto and tenor sax actually is not the same as between alto and soprano, even though both the soprano and the tenor are tuned in B flat. Because the soprano is 1 octave higher than the tenor, there's actually a perfect fifth, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 semitones between the alto and soprano, rather than a fourth as we just saw with the alto and tenor. Okay, So now that we've seen all the theory, let's actually learn how you can transpose something on the fly. But before that, just a quick reminder that if you got any value out of this video so far, there's a subscribe button right underneath the video as well as in the bottom right corner. And I would really appreciate it if you could smash that if you haven't already, of course. For those of you who want to support me even more, feel free to smash that like button as well. Thank you so much. Let's continue. Step 1 when transposing on the fly is finding a way that allows you to read the notes very quickly. And in my opinion, there are only two possible ways to do so, and I alternate between both of these depending on the situation. The first possibility to do so is to read the notes in the treble clef, or whatever your usual clef is if you're not a saxophone player, and add or subtract the interval you're transposing in your head for each note. In order to be fast here, you need to learn these by heart. For example, if you need to transpose a major second up, you need to learn by heart that a C becomes a D, an E flat becomes an F, a B becomes a C sharp, etc. Because while playing, you won't have the time to think about this. I personally find this way of transposing very useful when dealing with smaller intervals, like we did in the previous example with a major second. The second possibility is to adjust the clef to transpose the interval for you. For example, if you want to play an alto sax score in E flat on the piano, you simply read everything in F key or bass key, and most of your work is done. And I do say most of your work, because this way of transposing doesn't automatically correct the interval. So in this case, it doesn't transpose strictly major sixth lower, but also the occasional minor sixth, if you don't adjust them mentally. The easiest way of doing so is by simply transposing the key and adjusting the key signature as well. This means that if we go back to our example with the alto sax, assuming the alto sax was playing in C major, the piano will play in E flat major, with 3 flats on the key signature. Now, the foundation of your transposition is set. However, there's one last thing you need to be aware of when using this method: accidentals. Going back to our example, let's say the alto sax suddenly has a C sharp written in its score. The piano can't play an E sharp, as that would be a minor sixth, because every E is flat due to the key signature. So whenever the alto sax has a C sharp, the piano has to play an E natural and adjust the accidental. So really quickly, let's sum this method up. Step 1, change the clef. Step 2, adjust the key signature. Step 3, adjust the accidentals. Alright, that's finally it for this video. It's been my longest video ever. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it means the world to me. I'll also leave the link to my Instagram @JorisRampen down in the description. You can follow me there if that's something that you're into. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace. I'll never get tired of playing with these slides.